Welcome back to another edition of Racing Rundown here on YouTube. In this episode, we'll be previewing the Grade 1 $1 million Pegasus World Cup Turf Race 12 on Saturday, January 28th, over Gulfstream's turf course, going a mile and an eighth. Very strong rendition, in my opinion. Obviously not at the top level, but I think it's a good, deep race where there's a lot of opportunity to make some money. Which at the end of the day is the name of the game. So while maybe there isn't a Colonel Liam or a bricks and mortar for dating ourselves a few years back, there's still a very good core of a field that's going to make for a great betting race. So we're going to go through every single horse, also touch on the also eligibles, because as we know from the past year, that could be important at times. But either way, give every horse their due, draw up how the race might look, and then I'll give my opinions at the end. But as we always say, our goal is to help you guys get an idea of how to look at this race come Saturday. We'll start with the one that is Wit, newly turned 4-year-old, who had a very good 3-year-old campaign, obviously on the heels of a 2-year-old campaign that started off so promising. Wasn't able to fully live it out, but a horse who didn't disgrace himself even when the crop kind of caught up to him at 3. And then he switched to the grass in August, 4 straight starts on the surface, and hasn't missed the board. A win in 2 seconds and a third, including running a third, beating less than a length in the Hollywood Derby last time out, where he was coming late, just ended up not being able to outrun Speaking Scout, who also shows up in this race. But he's been good. He hasn't taken the step forward that I mentioned. The crop caught up to him, and now he's going to have to face elders for the first time. And while there could be tougher spots, this certainly isn't easy. And I just don't know if this is a race where I can fully expect him to turn that corner. There's nothing in the work tab or anything his past few starts to suggest a new leaf will be turned. But he's a solid horse who knows how to run well. I mean, he's really only ran one bad race in his career. That was Woody Stevens last June. So we'll see with Wit, but a horse I'm certainly willing to get beat by. The 2 is Good Governance. He'll be a big long shot. Made his first start last time out for Anna Mea, and it was a good fourth in the Fort Lauderdale. Came running really hard late despite the wide trip, and wasn't too far off of City Man and Decorated Invader, the Christophe Clement duo who are in this Pegasus World Cup turf. That was just the first start for that barn, was with Chad Brown before that. And a good, talented horse, just couldn't stay healthy, it seemed. He didn't run more than at most 4 times in a year. That was 2022. When he won a couple allowance races, ran in the stakes, was well beaten at Monmouth, and then ran an allowance race where he ran fine. I mean, he really has ran good race after good race throughout his career. We've just never gotten to see him try it at the top level. But he ran huge last time. I think the biggest hindrance to him will be coming from off the pace. Seems like a race that might tend to favor more forwardly placed horses than those coming from far back. But he, at the same time, wasn't exactly the greatest for him last time out in the Fort Lauderdale, which was coming off of a couple-month layoff, and he still ran just fine. So he's not crazy. He'll be a long shot, but I've seen crazier long shots out there before. Second time back for this trainer could mean big things. He ran so well against very similar last time out. Maybe a horse to use underneath, not maybe a win contender in my eyes, but I can see a case. The 3 is Atone for Mike Maker, who has really represented himself well. He's, of course, won this race with Zulu Alpha a handful of years ago. He's placed with some prices a few times. And Atone didn't do too poorly last year when he was 4th in this race, beaten just a length and 3/4. Since then, only 1 win, but that did come last time out. A good allowance win, went wire to wire up at Aqueduct, and I could see a similar trip playing out here, which might play into his hand pretty well. Also, a laundry list of stakes placings and solid graded stakes efforts. Last year, right after the Pegasus, was beaten only a length in the Maker's Mark mile, and then placed in some Grade 2, Grade 3 level races. Really only 1 bad run. It was a very tough rendition of the Coolmore Turf Mile at Keeneland in October. So I really am going to bank on that last race, and I think he's going to be a player in this spot. If he can go to the lead, there's not a ton of pace in here. If Ivar Ortiz can be aggressive, I could see that absolutely being the key to victory for Atone in here. We'll see, but a horse I'm certainly going to keep all my eyes on. Put up a big 100 buyer in that last start, just 1 point off of his career high that he set in the Grade 1 Maker's Mark mile last April. The 4 is Hurricane Dream, makes his first start in the U.S. forward trainer Graham Motion. Comes from France, where he's been running in Group 2, Group 3 company. Not disgracing himself, but he was never able to get the job done. And some of those horses are horses I don't think would be super big players here. So it's not like he brings in this amazing European form. Some good placings behind good horses, though. I think this race in May of Group 2, over a mile. There's some high-quality horses in there that he's beaten only a length and a quarter. When third, was beaten only a head in a great Group 2 in Germany, 2-back as well. So all in all, he's held some pretty solid form, but there's still plenty of questions that he'll have to answer. And just a horse who, making a first start Grand Motion, does not have good numbers. First time overseas, with first time out in the U.S. with overseas horses, I should say. And he has not been facing the greatest company in Europe and hasn't even been beating them. So a horse I'm definitely willing to pass on. The 5 is One More Bid. Back-to-back wins for this, another newly minted 4-year-old in here. This gelding took him forever to break his maiden. He was always running good races, dirt, turf, short, long. He could do it all, but he finally broke through 2-back, and then at 16-1 won the Mathis Brothers Mile at Santa Anita over a mile. And beat Balnikov, of course, really talented stakes performer for Phil D'Amato throughout last year, and a couple other pretty decent horses, and put up a career high 91 buyer. Now he'll have to get better. Can he get better? I can say so. He hasn't gotten the chance to go longer than a mile. Just the opportunities didn't exist, and the connections clearly wanted to keep him against horses he could factor get. So they kept him at the maiden special weight level, and then rather than try a first level allowance, even if it was a little longer, they tried the 3-year-olds, and it paid off last time out. Obviously, this is a really tough spot to try stakes horses, stakes elders for the first time. Raced against elders, plenty of time, but at this level, not so much. This is a tough spot, but he can set a good trip. He does have to get a lot better, though, and that's where my big concern comes in, is improving enough to be a big player in here, because it's a lot different than being on your best and winning a 3-year-old restricted grade 2 in a 6-horse field to shipping and trying to win $1 million race across the country. Big ask for this horse, but he is on a pattern of improvement. The 6 Lady Speightspeare, the mare, will try the boys here for a much bigger purse than the Philly and Mare Turf race, and a spot that she can play in based off of that good third last time out in the Breeders' Cup Philly and Mare Turf. Prior to that, she racketed off 3 in a row, one via dead heat, but a win nonetheless. And we really haven't gotten to see her go a mile and an eighth other than once, but that was the Hillsborough last year where the pace was pretty hot and she was close to it, and she was never really able to stick around. But she just got into really good form after going up to Woodbine around July last year after some tough runs down here in the U.S. She figured it out really nicely, and that was proven very well when she ran third in the Philly and Mare Turf at 32-1, losing to Tuesday, a class filly from Europe, an Oaks winner, and now a Breeders' Cup winner, and an Italian, multiple Grade 1 winner here in the U.S. up in New York. So, point is, she's done a lot of good. Very interested to see how she'll handle the boys. But if she can run back to that last race, you got to think she plays in some way. Another one I'm definitely going to keep my eye on. The 7 Speaking Scout comes off a Grade 1 win in the Hollywood Derby. He's won 2 of his last 3, and that only loss in between was a half-length defeat in the Twilight Derby, a very productive race, and the winner in their Cabo Spirits, a multiple stakes winner as well. Not to mention, he likes to smile on the 8th distance. Both of his graded stakes wins have come at it. He's another one, though, that does have to try older horses for the first time, and I don't know. I didn't feel like that Hollywood Derby spoke that this crop was super good, and when they tried 4-year-old and up for the first time, they'd be able to stick with him. I didn't get that read, and I think his form from last year kind of echoes that in some ways. Obviously, he got really good towards the end of the year, but still, nothing that stands out and tells me he can hang, even with a slightly weaker version of this $1 million race. So he's another one I'm willing to pass on. I just don't know if that 3-year-old form is going to translate over too well, even though this guy's in good form right now. The 8 is Who's the Star, an interesting entry here. He's won 4 of his last 5. All stakes, 3 straight graded stakes on top of that. But is this the spot? He's a horse who has ran some big races on the grass and won twice over the surface after mainly staying on the dirt early on in his career. And then last time out, going 1.5 miles in the valedictory to kind of end off the Woodbine meet last year. So it's just a whole different ball game. While he put up some big figs, including a 101 at the Durham Cup win, those horses are not these horses. Even if I might discredit them a little bit and say they're not the top of the top turf horses in the U.S. that we've seen over the past 5-10 years, they're still a lot better than what Who's the Star has been beating up in Canada. And on top of that, I don't think this is going to set up well for me. It's a big, deep closer. He came from nearly 10 lengths back in a 1.5 mile race. How far back do you think he'll be in a 1.1 mile race like this? I just don't think with the lack of true pace in here, his running style and the quality competition, he's much of a fit. The 9 Decorated Invader, now a 6-year-old, but you might remember him from when he was a 2-year-old and was one of the favorites in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. But he's down to that form back again. He's put in really big runs throughout 2022 and now into 2023, has all the momentum. It just seems like he kind of lost his way, and I couldn't really tell you why when I looked through the running lines. It just seems like he was kind of running the same race every time. But off the break, they softened him up into allowance company, and it went well. He got a confidence booster up at Woodbine, second off of a over year-long layoff. Then comes out, runs a solid fourth in a paceless race in the Artie Schiller, and then ran a huge second in the Fort Lauderdale, a race that produced a career-high Beyer. That's huge. Coming into a race like this, and Christophe Clement, of course, he's rare to let a horse bounce off of a big run like that. But still, I have questions. City Man was clearly better on the day. He's a horse I'd much rather side with. There's just still not enough behind Decorated Invader for me to really trust him, because he lost his way for a long time, and he still has not proven he can hang at the top level. I could see him run a big race, but I just don't know. I can't trust him enough to be that type of horse. The 10 is Ivar. I think he's a very valid favorite in here with the form he's put together, class above on his best day, of course. He's ran at 3 straight Breeders' Cup miles and has never been beaten worse than 2 lengths. That is so impressive. A fourth in 2020, beaten 2. A third in 2021, beaten a length and a half. Beaten a length into fourth behind some very talented horses in his last start, the Breeders' Cup Mile. But at the same time, he's also a horse who kind of felt like he didn't want to win last year. He was always there each and every start, but could never get the job done, and that could be against anybody. So I don't know. That is my one concern with this horse, but I think he can make his own race. He obviously is a standout on figs. He has the best back class. It's just going to be about working out the trip and having the will to win, because it feels like he's kind of lost that over the past 2 years. The 11's Masterpiece makes his first start for Saffie Joseph in here, now his third trainer in the past 2 years. I believe he was privately purchased from previous connections from that last start in the Breeders' Cup Turf, which kind of aligned through a tough spot, never was really going to have much of a chance. But his form in the 2 starts before that at Del Mar, very strong. He won the Eddie Reed Grade 2 at 16-1, beating Hong Kong Harry, the only horse to beat Hong Kong Harry last year, which is very impressive in my mind. And then a good second, beating only ahead when he ran a huge race in the Del Mar Handicap. So 2 good races, but outside of that, the form has not been that great. And I think that makes it tough. Is he just a horse who likes Del Mar? I mean, you go back to 2021, that's probably his 3rd best race in the U.S., and that was a good second in that Del Mar Handicap. So is he a horse for course, or is he just kind of spotty? Either way, I don't like it. Right? I can't find a valid reason to think he can really step it up here. One positive angle, he is 3 for 3 at a mile and an eighth. Eddie Reed win, an allowance victory way back in April of 2021 when he was first in the U.S., and you go way back to his form down in South America is where you'd find that last one. But point being, that could be an angle you circle in on. I just think he's a cut below. There's too many questions about him as well. Finally, the 12, City Man. City Man on a 3-race winning streak. The New York bred has finally figured it out in open company when he shipped down to Florida and won the Fort Lauderdale Grade 2 over Decorated Invader. I feel that not too far off of this, but definitely a cut below. Either way, you like a horse that's in such good form here with those 3 straight wins. And 4 of his last 5. He also won the Forbidden Apple in July. Once again, a very similar field. Beat Atone, who was second in that spot. So he figured it all out pretty nicely. Outside post, I don't like. It's going to be a bit of a challenge to work over running into that first turn, but I think he could probably do it and sit the right trip. It's just going to be a question of taking advantage from there. Is he a horse who's just truly on a strong winning pattern? I'm definitely letting the old form creep in a bit, because you could just never trust him to run 2 good races in a row. But he did kind of put that away in his last 3 starts. So it's kind of balancing that. Certainly a horse you have to use in multi-races. Certainly a horse you have to use in your vertical wagers. I mean, he makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. And finally, we'll wrap it up with 2 also eligibles. King Cause, another Mike Maker runner if he gets in. He won the Knickerbocker going wire to wire, very cheap victory in my opinion. 2 back, and then he was 9th in the Fort Lauderdale with a less than stellar trip. And then finally, Steady on a horse who's been first or second in every 2-turn turf start. That's 4 in total. Barely missed in the Tropical Park Derby last time out, which was run over the Tapeta. A horse who, if he makes it in, I don't know if he can play, because I don't think the trip would be good, but obviously in the right form for Todd Pletcher. So with that, here are my thoughts on how this race will play out. I am going to go with Atone on top, and I think this could be a sneaky lone speed angle. Obviously, there could be pressure. Lady Speightspeare being chief among them. But if you look back at her 4 of her last 5 races, she has not gone to the lead. I mean, I can't explain why, but they've been able to rate her successfully. The Breeders' Cup filling her turf, chiefly amongst those. So she'd be a big threat. One more bid. He's a true stalker, but he can be forwardly placed. But Atone, based off that last race, wants to be ridden aggressively. Some of his best races of his career have been forward-thinking rides, and I think Ivar Ortiz is going to be aboard to make that happen. He's going to get out of the gates, hustle him hard, no speed to his inside, both horses from off the pace, and he can make the rail and make the lead. And if no one really pushes him, which I don't think those two horses I mentioned, One More Bid, Lady Speightspeare, or even City Man or Decorated Invader from their outside post, can truly apply the pressure that would soften him up. So I'm going to take that risk, go Atone on top. That being said, you definitely got to use City Man, as I mentioned. Ivar, another must use, and I would also throw in Lady Speightspeare. So I think you take a little bit of a shot on top with Atone and look at those more logicals underneath. It can make for a big day both ways. We're going to see if Mike Baker can finally get his second win after some really strong runs in these past few years. So that's it for this Pegasus World Cup turf. A very wide open race, very evenly matched. Could see most of them getting the job done here. But it's going to be a fun race. And like I said, it's a fun betting race because I feel like you can find a strong angle for just about every single horse in this race. And I'd be like, okay, yeah, power to you. Go and play. So I hope this was helpful. Hope to help you decipher a few things in what's going to be a very challenging race to play in a lot of ways. Definitely a race you can't get too skinny in. But it'll be a fun one and part of a really fun Gulfstream card that I'm sure most listeners are very excited to play. So we'll see you next time here on Racing Rundown, and good luck to you if you're playing this weekend.